Right now, multiple people dead after an early morning shooting spree at the Navy Yard in D.C. Many questions remain as the search for clues gets underway. We have the very latest from our nation's capital. And next,
I am proud to stand here today and support Bill de Blasio.
Well, we finally have a Democratic nominee. Buckle up and get ready for the race for City Hall. It's about to get very interesting. And tonight, Dominic sits down for a one-on-one interview with a man who will be facing off against Mr. de Blasio, Republican Joe Lhota. The question is, will the Big Apple want to keep Gracie Mansion out of Democratic hands? And later, just 14 days away from a potential government shutdown, and we are again forced to deal with lawmakers who just might hurt the country just because they can. Yes, the silly season has returned to our nation's capital. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Richard French Live. Thank you so much for joining us this Monday evening, September 16th. And we start with some more tragic breaking news from Washington. In the heart of D.C., it is now a massive crime scene. Hundreds of heavily armed police and federal agents swarming the sprawling U.S. Naval Yard there after at least one gunman opened fire. He was killed along with 12 others, though that number may still yet climb. The first reports of gunshots at the Navy Yard came around 8:20 this morning.
This is a horrific tragedy, certainly one of the worst in recent memory.
One shooter is dead.
We can confirm that the deceased shooter from this morning has been identified as 34-year-old Aaron Alexis.
But D.C. police warned they're still investigating one other possible gunman dressed in a military uniform.
We do still have an active search for potentially additional suspects right now.
A deadly and chaotic scene quickly unfolded this morning. Witnesses inside the building said they saw a shooter with a rifle.
He aimed his gun at us and he fired at least 2 or 3 shots.
Navy Commander Tim Gyrus was talking about the shootings with another man, and then that man got shot.
We had 2 gunshots that went off near us. One hit him, he fell down, and then I ran from there after that.
Building 197 is the headquarters for the Naval Sea Systems Command. 3,000 people work there.
Everybody on base inside is told to stay put, don't go anywhere, just, stay safe.
The Navy Yard is in a very busy area of the nation's capital, just blocks away from the Washington Nationals baseball stadium and several government agencies. Earlier today, President Obama said that the military personnel that were targeted were patriots.
We are confronting yet another mass shooting. These are men and women who were going to work, doing their job, protecting all of us. They're patriots, and they know the dangers of serving abroad, but today they face the unimaginable violence that they wouldn't have expected here at home.
So still many unanswered questions at this point. What was the motive behind that? Again, was there an additional gunman at the scene? We know people still being treated, but at this count, 13 dead in yet another senseless, tragic shooting in America. I want to bring in our panel on this. Jeannie Zaino, professor of political science at Iona College and professor of campaign management at NYU. Dominic Carter, political journalist and author, and Andrew Whitman, our senior political correspondent. And guys, rather than guess as to what was going on behind the scenes, and we'll learn this, I guess, in due time, just the scene of Washington being a giant crime scene today. The thing to me, Jeannie, that struck me was the instant inclination was, again, it wasn't shock that this happened, not that you expect it, but we've seen so many of these, from a schoolhouse with 6- and 7-year-olds to college campuses to movie theaters to rural communities to inner cities to suburban areas, and the locations may change here, but the same commonality, just senseless violence. And again, it's just yet another headline in America, and you hardly blink an eye anymore, even with as tragic as the circumstances of today are.
Yeah, and absolutely. And 13 people dead, another mass shooting, as the president mentioned, coming on the heels last Tuesday of the recall vote in Colorado for the legislators that voted in favor of gun control. The issue, and I know that Dominic's going to be talking to Joe Lhota, but the issue of security, that's certainly going to be one of the major issues in the New York City election. So, I mean, it's a real concern, and Congress coming back, and it doesn't look like gun control legislation will move at all in Congress this year at least doesn't seem possible. So it seems like it's something we're going to continue to see in the headlines, unfortunately, but we're almost stalled in legislatively as both the state and the city, state, and national level in terms of what can happen to kind of quell these issues. That's not to say, however, that the type of legislation they had in Colorado would have stopped you know, an incident like this, because we really don't know enough to say that.
And we're getting developments that are just coming across right now that there could be a local hook to this. The gunman, the deceased in this, so Alexis was born in Queens, and apparently they're searching a building, law enforcement right now in Bed-Stuy, in connection with this investigation. And again, in the earlier portion of the day, they thought, and this is the shooter that's been confirmed, they fingerprinted him after the fact. And, there was conflicting reports as to whether or not he had an ID of someone else that gained him access to security questions that are going on around the building. But nonetheless, we don't know motive behind it. And there were questions, Andrew, as to whether or not there was additional gunmen that were involved. This morning we heard an account of white and an African-American, two men in between 40 and 50 that may have been wearing uniforms. One has subsequently been cleared. The African-American that they're looking for questioning was seen in fatigues, and he is still a person of interest in this, and they'll be doing some questioning. But again, we'll follow up on some of the local connections, if there are any, as part of this investigation.
Well, it's understandable that there was a lot of confusion. There were so many people there who are armed, who had access to it as a naval site. It's somewhat ironic. We hear all this talk about, you know, if only there were more people who had weapons in spots.
Yeah, apparently it wasn't common, obviously, for people walking around with guns, and they think there might have been semi-automatics. But rather, Dom, than at this point, as tempting as it might be to ascribe here some of the facts that we don't know, it's just so sad. You know, you keep hearing this and the senselessness of this. And it's like yet another Dateline in America. And you change the places, you change the totals, you change the facts surrounding it. You got people of all different colors and ages that are these shooters, from disaffected youth to this guy was an angry, we don't know the facts surrounding him, but a person in his mid-30s, a former, he worked formerly there, also a military contractor from Texas. And again, we'll find out more. But it just seems there's one common element to these things, and then one common tragic ending, too.
Well, all of us are going home tonight. Most Americans are going home to their loved ones tonight. 12 families, and even including the shooter's family, 13, will never be the same again. Mommy's not coming home, or perhaps daddy's not coming home, or grandma or grandpa. And it's just, I don't know when it will ever stop. You know, we don't know if it's international or domestic. We do know that the NRA defends their members, you know, tooth and nail to the end, and it just keeps happening, and it's going to keep happening.
And we'll know more, like we always do in these cases, in the days following how he got the weapon, what the weapon itself, were there any telltale signs that this was a troubled person, had he made earlier threats, and obviously the ongoing investigation part of this was anyone else involved. And as we said, if you're joining us late, after the 13 people that were killed in that Navy Yard shooting in D.C., apparently law enforcement officials are looking in Bed-Stuy right now as to a potential connection to this gunman. We'll, of course, keep you updated on the developments of this story throughout the night, as well as obviously in the coming days. All right. We will switch gears, however, and after the break, we will turn to politics. We've covered extensively the race for City Hall, the primary that didn't have a conclusion, finally got a period on it today. Bill Thompson officially has dropped out of the race. What went wrong for the man that many thought was the favorite going into this, and what lies ahead for Mr. de Blasio. And later, you will hear from the man who is facing off against that new Democratic nominee, Republican Joe Lhota. Dominic sat down with him, and among the questions, talking about the Giuliani legacy and is this a man who could keep Republicans in Gracie Mansion? Much more on RFL after this break. Please stay with us.